to work on it. And I have to tell you, this book that I'm talking about today is impossible. Every part of it, everybody that's in the industry told me that it was absolutely impossible for this to happen. But here it is. Why is it impossible? Well, first of all, think about it. Two people completely across the world from each other put it together. This is Tom Flynn, his picture, and he lives in London. So for he and I to work together is a little tough. Also, Tom doesn't read or write. When he was a little boy, 60 years ago, they just pushed him through the school. It was in London. Now, one of his dear friends that I've gotten close to, she lives in London, Vivian Brocklehurst, very proper English name, delightful woman. She's a retired teacher, and she says she believes that he was dyslexic, and they didn't know what to do with him. So how do you write a book with somebody that can't read and write your memos or your posts? You know, that kind of complicates it. And the other part is, think of this. Tom and I signed a contract in it was April 12th, 2016. This book was first sold on Amazon March 1st, 2017. That doesn't happen. That can't happen. Books can't get done that quick, but it did. And it's important to know that if you have a dream and work hard, you can make it happen. And that's sort of a reflection of who Tom is. First of all, he's a medium. What do they know about books? Do any of you know mediums or know what mediums are? Hi, Amy. And since you're late, we make you sit in the front. That's great.
Long Island medium on TV.
Yes, and she's great. But I'll have to tell you, after seeing a lot of mediums, and I've met quite a few, Tom is so specific, he's amazing. But so many people don't think they're even real, that working with somebody who's doing something that a lot of people don't believe in adds its challenges. Now, Tom's story is fascinating. He came from super poor family. He was the seventh child. They lived in what was public housing in a little town outside of London. They did not have an inside bathroom. So you've got 10 people, his parents, a boarder, and 7 kids in a house with no inside bathroom. Everybody in the neighborhood thought it was normal, but it's pretty hard to imagine doing it now. His dad was a carpenter, sort of a jack of all trades, did whatever he could to support the family. His mom was a Romany gypsy who was born primarily paralyzed on one side. She gave birth to 10 kids, and 7 of them lived. So they had some real challenges. And then Dad died when Tom was 7. Mom died when he was 13. So he was raised by his older siblings who held things together as best they could in the public housing. But not exactly a very auspicious beginning. And of course, I've told you that he can't read or write, which certainly makes your job prospects difficult. And his older brothers and sisters were not in a position to teach him. They were barely surviving. Then when he was a teenager, one of his aunts, Romany Gypsy one, took him to a little group, and they were doing readings. She was doing flower readings and different things. And she said, "Okay, Tom, stand up. It's your turn." Going, "What? What am I supposed to do?" "Just relax and see if you get any information for anybody in the room. Just tell them what you feel inside." He gave a personal reading for everybody in that room. And afterwards, she said, "All right, now it's time to do what you were born to do. Go do it." He had no idea. No training, no background. He was scared to death to speak in front of people, but that's what he did, and that's how he started. Now, this guy who had no training, no education, he's certainly not rich, has literally traveled all over the world. Doesn't have any money, but people will hear him speak, and they'll say, "Hey, could you come to Canada? Could you come to Australia? Could you come to the United States? We'll pay your way. Just come and do readings and talk. We'll set up some events." And that's what he does. So he literally is living an impossible dream. I've worked very hard. I haven't been all over the world yet. I haven't been anywhere really, but I'm hoping, and the plan is, that I'll be able to go to some events with Tom. But we have to wait for the universe to make it happen, because it hasn't happened otherwise. Even the history of putting the book together is impossible. And I can tell you, Amy here also told me what I was trying to do could never be done in this time frame. Amy is an amazing woman. She's an author. She's a scientist. She's a publisher. She knows what she's talking about. She says, this can't be done. But we did it. We did it. Tom was approached in 2006 by people that he did readings for that said, you should write a book. Well, he obviously can't write it. And they said, that doesn't matter. Put it on tape. And so he got an old-fashioned cassette player, remember the tapes going from side to side. And he did. He talked about his life. And I think there were like 7 or 8 tapes. And another friend that he had read for. Once you meet this man, you become a friend for life. He's just really special. And he does come to Sacramento a couple of times a year. So the next time he comes, Linnea and Patrick said we'll have him here again so you can meet the other half of this project. So a lady transcribed it for him. Trust me, transcribed tapes are not a book, okay? They're just not. But for 10 years, he had these transcribed tapes that had been printed out. He didn't know what to do with it. One woman said, well, I'll publish it. And then she went through it and, oh, no. I can't deal with this kind of stuff. It made her, the medium, the things that he does and says, made her very uncomfortable. Well, you have to respect that. It's not for everybody. So that dream went out. And then he met a man. They became good friends, whose name's Chris Machalik. I could just call him Chris. Long Polish last name. We'll call him Chris. And Chris and Tom became good friends, and Chris decided he was going to help Tom get this book published. Chris lives in Sacramento, in Natomas. But the two of them have met all over the world and traveled. So Chris started doing the searching, going online, trying to find a publisher. He found several. Just send us $6,000. We'll make it a hit throughout the world. But he was smart enough to know that that's not the way you want to get a book published. And then he saw an advertisement in a local Facebook thing about a meeting. It was going to be held in Sacramento by this group called the Northern California Publishers and Authors. And he thought, well, maybe somebody there would help him. So he goes. And he sat outside in the rain for 15 minutes, he said, having this internal dialogue. No one's going to talk to me. No one's going to help me. I don't know anything. I don't know about that. But he finally said, I got to do it for Tom. So he went inside. Wouldn't you know it? That's the group that I'm the president of. And he sat right here. And so I turned around, being the shy, retiring type, and said, well, hi. Have never seen you before. Welcome. What brings you here? Are you a writer? Nope. But his friend wrote a book, and he wanted to get it published. He said, we needed an editor. And I said, well, great. I know some editors. We'll put them in touch with your friend. My friend's in London. Okay, that complicates it a little bit, but we can still do it. And I said, send me the PDF, and I'll see what I can do for you. So he sent me the PDF. It was about 135 pages. I read 10. Still didn't know what it was about. Had no idea. When you're talking, it's not a book. I was not going to read the rest of it to figure this out. So I called Chris, and he told me what Tom does, that he's a medium and healer. And when he talked about his mom as a Romany gypsy, I'm hooked. Okay, that sounds fascinating. So we decided to get together, and we did. Chris and I just got along great. And I gave him a copy of my memoir because I said, okay, I'm hooked, but I don't want to just edit it. I would like to or put it to somebody else. I want to do this. But you need to know what kind of a writer I am to find out if you even have faith in me. This is like a marriage, believe me. So I gave him a copy of my memoir, and then we started chatting. Chris said he used to be a printer. I said, oh my goodness. Do you know June Azevedo? He says, of course I do. I used to work with Azevedo's laminating all the time. I said, she's my mother. Are you kidding? How could this be? Not only did he know my mom, but his print shop was on El Camino, and I drove by it every day on the way to work before we had shut our company in 2008. And then he says, well, he met Tom. Where did you meet Tom? Oh, at a spiritualist church. And I didn't even know anything about spiritualist churches. They believe in mediums and in that life extends past death. The spiritualist church where he met Tom is on Marconi, a walking distance from my house, and they've been there 20 years. Wow. If I made that up, people would say, nobody, that's crazy. But that's the way it works. So then I met Tom, and we got it all going. We're going to make this happen. And then, so in November, Tom came to Sacramento, and he was at the church. This was my first chance not to meet him, because I'd met him, but I wanted to hear him do readings. Have any of you, well, you've seen the medium shows on TV, but have you ever been to personal readings with mediums or gotten a reading? Okay. Usually, they're fairly vague. Your mom loves you, or what? Well, most of our moms love us, okay? Tom was so specific, it was almost scary. We didn't have a huge group, but he starts out and he just waits to see what spirits are in the room talking to him. And he looks at the guy over and he said, oh, what's your name? And the guy told him his name. And he said, well, you and your mom were really close. She loves you to death. And the guy says, well, yes. And he says, but she's really irritated with you this morning. Why did you leave a mess in the kitchen? You could have at least taken a few minutes, dunked that coffee cup out and rinsed it and left it in the sink. How lazy to just leave it sitting on the sideboard. She really is not happy with you. Now that's pretty specific. But that's the way he is. He'll tell you what somebody's wearing. He'll tell you how your room is decorated, what pictures you have on the wall. I was blown away because I've never seen a medium with this specific of information. And by the way, I hope that you all approach someone who says they're a medium or a psychic, because I'm not a medium, but I am intuitive, with a huge grain of salt. Don't believe everything that comes to you straight out of the box. Please don't. Unless what they say resonates with you personally, just wish them the best, but always approach something with a good grain of salt. Because God gave you a good brain for a reason, and that you're supposed to use it. So, well, anyway, after Tom finished with his readings, he came over and gave me a big hug. He's very warm, just a really sweet man. And he said, Sharon, I'm so excited. I've got all these bookings in English and in England in February, in Cambridge and all over London and stuff, and in March in Ireland, and it's going to be so great to have copies of the book with me so I can have them at the events. I'm going, oh, wonderful, Tom. I hadn't finished writing it, and that was in November, and he needed it in February. That's when I told Amy, she's going, no, that's impossible. You cannot do that. I had to get permissions for a cover photo. I had to get reviews. I had to finish writing. I had interviews from people he knew to get all that done. But I couldn't look in this man's face and say, nope, not happening. I just said, okay, And it's crazy. Everything just fell into place. Everybody that I needed to talk to got right back to me immediately, got their interviews. I needed a picture, and the picture that Tom wanted, I called that woman, but she's a professional photographer. That didn't work. But Chris had taken lots of pictures of Tom when they were together in Costa Rica. He knew I needed high-res pictures, sent me a bunch, and I cropped this one and chose it. So now I own it, so that was okay. But a big stumbling block, when you're putting a book out, you want publicity and you want credibility when it's a nonfiction book. Through the years, Tom had had all these articles printed about him in the Psychic News. The Psychic News is an international magazine. It's been around since the 20s. There's an online version and there's a print version, and they're all over the world. It's the premier one. And Tom said, here's all these clippings I have, only they call them cuttings. Okay, put those in the book. You can't use a 20-year-old clipping. It's been in your wallet all this time. Now the resolution doesn't work. And besides that, you can't reprint something without permission from the publisher. They own it. So what the heck? I went online and I looked up Psychic News. Oh boy, they've changed ownership several times. They were out of business for a year. That this is never going to work. But I emailed them, told them what I was doing, and said, here's the clippings that I have, the date and everything. Is it possible to get the originals and permission to publish them? They responded the next day, gave me permission for all of them and sent me the originals. Can you believe that? And said they would be happy to support the book. There's a big review from them on the back. And they just, in their May magazine, put a beautiful full-color review with a picture of the cover and a really nice thing which went out all over the world. Now, you can call all of that coincidence. Vivian Brocklehurst has a much better term. She calls it spirit planning. And I love that term. The book needed to come out, and the universe just conspired to make it all happen. And the purpose for this book, for writing it, was not to say, wow, Sharon, you could do it. The impossible. Come on in, Norma, and you're stuck in the very front. This is another friend of mine and does all kinds of terrific writing. But the purpose of this book is to share Tom's message, which is, your life doesn't end when you die. It goes on. And the people that you love that have passed on, they're still aware of you. You can still communicate, which is an absolutely beautiful thing to know. And he's such an interesting man that even if his message, you either are skeptic or you think, Sharon and Tom are both crazy, but that's okay, they're nice, okay? And if that's where you fall, that's all right if you're entertained. So that's my story. That's what Tom's like. What questions can I answer for you?
When's he coming back?
You know, I don't know the time. He comes usually twice a year, and he spends some time in Sacramento because he always goes to the Central Spiritualist Church, and he'll come here when I ask him, and he has a lot of friends here, and he also has a lot of friends in the Bay Area. So he comes to both places. I think he's planning on coming this summer, and I know he'll come in the fall or whatever. It just depends on when somebody says, hey, Tom, why don't you come on out and we'll pay your way and set up some events for you. So when the Spirit decides that it's the right time, Tom will be here. And I would love to have everybody's email, and I'm sure Lene has it, so that when Tom comes, you can come out and meet him. This guy is so warm. And he loves soccer, he loves to sing, he has a great sense of humor. But what he feels like to me, it's almost like a childlike personality. He doesn't have any guile. You know what I mean? He's not thinking of angles. He just is who he is. And that was it. Yes, Tom?
On the book, is it a collection of his readings or healings, both?
It's actually split into two parts, so you kind of get a flavor of both. When I was going through his original thing, I was pulling my hair out, how to turn this into a book, but also to keep his personality. And I would start and then I would tear it up. And I'd start and I'd tear it up, which didn't work too well with the time frame I was under. And I finally decided, you know what? The front part, and it even says part 1, Tom's story in Tom's words. So I just cleaned up his narrative so that it wasn't just tapes, it was like a book, and put it in more chronological order with stuff so it made sense. The first part is Tom talking about him, how we get it, how some of the readings, and he tells a lot of anecdotes about things that happened. One of them I love. It actually came from Vivian, but I put it in the front part. Tom did a reading, and it was a pretty large group, and it was a flower reading, which I didn't know what flower readings are, but apparently everybody would bring a flower, and when they came in the door, they put it in the vase. And Tom wasn't the keeper of the vase, but later everybody brought the vase up in front, and Tom would pull out a flower, and he would immediately give a reading for whoever had held the flower. The energy was contained there. Well, one of the flowers he pulled out and he says, "Oh, I see a concert. This is a man and he's going to a music concert and you're going to have a wonderful time. Who is this?" And the guy raises his hand and he says, "Nope, no concert." And Tom says, and he, you kind of hold a little bit. He says, "But I still see you at the concert and it's going to be wonderful. The spirits are telling me that it's all planned, you're going, it's great." And this man kept insisting no. Finally, the woman next to him said, "I'm his wife. Thanks a lot. They're his birthday present. It was going to be a surprise." So Tom shares, like I said, specifics. He didn't know these people. So the first part, that's what it's about. The second part, I said, Tom's story, or more about Tom, and that was me writing how it came about, how we met, but also a number of people that I interviewed that know him well. One of them, oh my goodness, it's amazing. She was in an audience in the Bay Area, and she was sitting down, and when Tom went over to her, he said, "That's odd. There's a president with you." Now remember, he's from London, so he doesn't know our presidents. He said, "There's a president with you, and there's a little black dog running around your legs." And the lady just started smiling. She's a docent at the ship that's in the San Francisco Bay. Now the name's gone out of my head. That's what happens when you get old. But that was known as FDR's floating White House. And she's a docent. That's the president. And his little black Scotty dog is who Tom saw running around the legs. And she said, "Oh, I'll arrange a private tour for you to come on the ship and see if you get anything else." So that was pretty exciting. And Tom was taken to the ship. And as soon as they got on the ship, he immediately took off on his own and went to what was FDR's office. And he sat down in the chair. And this lady was there, as well as the one who was telling the interview to me. And Tom sat there and he said, "Oh my God, my legs, I can't feel my legs, I can't stand up." FDR, of course, had polio and couldn't stand. And he felt that in his legs when he was sitting there in the chair. And then he looked at her and he said, "Elvis never slept here." And nobody knew what it meant. She laughed and did. Elvis Presley bought that ship after, FDR passed on him, whatever. Elvis Presley bought it, but he never went on board and slept there. Now, how would Tom know those kind of things? That's impossible. But those are the kind of deal in the second portion. First is him talking. Second is people who have met Tom, and he's made a difference in their life. They've gone through some pretty rough events, and he talks about those. So, any other questions? Yes?
A couple here. How you told about how his medium, his reading came about. How did his healing come about?
I'm sorry?
How did his ability
Don't know. He was asked to do healing, and he just said, well, I don't know. I'll ask the spirits. And he would put his hands on, or if somebody doesn't want it touched, he'd put his hands near. And he said he just prayed because he's a very spiritual man. He believes in prayer completely and in doing good. And he'd put his hands and he would just ask the spirits to heal. And doesn't always do it. There's no guarantees in things. I personally believe sometimes we have an illness or an injury because we're supposed to learn something from it. I mean, I don't know. But oftentimes he can. Vivian, in one of these, tells about an event where she closed her eyes for a healing because that's her habit, and everybody was focusing their energy with Tom. And the person that he was healing had just had a bad auto accident, and their leg was a mess, quite swollen. And as she had her eyes closed, she heard everybody in the room suddenly gasp. And she opened her look, swelling was gone. Just pretty amazing. And there's been, he talks about a lot. He just says that it's through a gift, and one of his spirit guides. Now, when he's talking about spirit guides, he's talking about somebody who's on the other side that comes and helps him. His parents are spirit guides. They're with him to this day. And there's pictures of them and lots of other things in the book of his mom and dad. But one time when he was asked to do a healing, he had a spirit guide come through that's a doctor. Well, he had died quite a bit earlier, but he used to be a doctor when he was alive. And he's had 3 different psychic artists draw pictures of Tom's doctor spirit guide. And there's a picture of that in here too. They're all pictures of the same man. So 3 different people drew pictures of the same spirit guide. And that person helps him. You know, Edgar Cayce used to get healings and stuff through. Well, Tom does too. But like Edgar Cayce, you can't guarantee, you just don't know. But he does what he can, and it's by healing. And that's something, I felt like such an idiot, this little spiritualist church. Well, what the heck's a spiritualist church? And I went and I loved it. Like any other church, they have their belief system and so forth. But spiritualist churches are all over the world, primarily in English-speaking countries. But their belief system is basically that, you know, like most others, but that we don't stop living when we die. We're on the other side. And spiritualist churches do a lot of the same things. They do blessings, they do prayers, they do hymns. You don't want to be next to me if we're singing hymns, I promise. I'll mouth it. You don't want to listen to me singing. But they also do healings, and they'll have people in what they call healing chairs. You can go up and sit down and see if they, when the minister is leading a healing prayer, and the healers can help you, or we're all sitting there thinking of healing that we need or somebody else. So they have healing as part of it, and then the minister or anyone that's visiting, like Tom goes as a medium, and they give medium readings for everybody in the room, which is pretty interesting. I enjoy it. So, yes, Tom.
With this gentleman here, some mediums, they seem to have a ability to read just a general person's life. Some more toward the future, some more toward their past. Does he have a proclivity toward one or the other?
Okay, I would call that type of information what I do as an intuitive. Okay, what an actual medium and what Tom does when he's doing a reading, like if he said, Mary, I have a man here, he would actually be in communication with a spirit that is here that knows Mary. And they would identify the relationship to Mary, because that's what he does, and what they have to say to her. Okay? That is a strict medium. He is strictly passing on information from spirits who are in the room. Someone who is telling you information they know about you, they're feeling something about you. what's on your mind, what choices you're facing, what's coming up in the future, or maybe a fear you have and they're working your way through it. That is an intuitive, okay? That I do that. So I know my mother, God bless her, sometimes she'll actually introduce me to people and say, "This is my oldest daughter, Cheryl." Or Sharon. Yeah, that's my daughter. She does get my name wrong a lot anyway. She would say, "This is Lori." No, but you've said, "This is Lori." That's my sister's name. Okay, we all do that. But she'll say, "This is my oldest daughter, Sharon. She's really sweet. Sometimes she scares the crap out of us, but she's very nice."
Better yet, I say, "This is the woman that scares the crap out of me."
Yeah, but that's okay. That's an intuitive sense. Just like there's all kinds of gifts, and I would just say there's like gifts that were given just like running fast or being great at math. They're a muscle, they're a gift, and if we use them, they develop. If we don't, they're not. And I do talk about my intuitive gifts as well as a lot of crazy things I've done in my life. Like Linnea and I met through cat rescue. And of course, Carol and Wanda are both cat rescuers, and I've done that for years. Do you? Okay. And so I have books that I've written about cat rescue, but I talk about all those aspects of my life in my memoir, which I have those here too. So, any other questions? Yes, Carol.
Where is this church on Marconi?
It's on. It's near the intersection of, well, between, I should say, Fulton and Wright Street. You know, there's lights at both. And you know those kind of dark brown old buildings that used to have National Guard and stuff in there? It's in there. And in the back of the book here, I have lots of resources, and I do have the Central Spiritualist Church mentioned, and it has their website. And a lot of others. I did not put phone numbers and addresses because those can change. But you can go online and find it. I love it. And it's crazy. A woman I know that I gave this book to because she's had a very hard life. You guys know who I'm talking about. Betty Smith. Betty's had many tough things happen to her. And I gave her, she loved my memoir, and I gave her a copy of Tom's book. And I was in Mexico. Was I in Portland or Mexico? I did some traveling last month. You know, it's really good. She went to the church because I mention it in the book. And she left a phone message for me. She said never in her life has she been in a place where she felt so warmly welcome. Now, it's tiny. If there's a dozen of us there, that's a big service. There's the Golden Gate Spiritualist Church in San Francisco is this huge, gorgeous mansion, and they have a lot more people that go and so forth. But the Central is little tiny. And Betty, though, she said that was the greatest gift I could have given her, and now she goes pretty frequently. So if you go there, I might see you there. I don't get to go every time because schedules are crazy, but I think you'd enjoy it. Any other questions?